Hi, everyone. Ooh, can you hear me okay? Great. If you haven't picked up copies of the materials, I tried to put them on like the first and third rows, hoping people would sit closer to us, but feel free to grab a copy and take it back to your seat so you can follow along. Also, I think we're going to be scanning badges, so we can email you the information as well if you want copies for your colleagues at the office. So Scott back there in the brown blazer will be scanning badges as you leave or anytime you want to get them scanned. So we'll have you and be able to send that information to you. So again, yes, thank you all for being here. As Cardis mentioned, I'm Valerie Briggs, Communications Director with RESNET. We have partnered with TAB to go across the state, actually, for the past about 4 months to help educate builders, contractors, code officials, and others on this new legislation, Texas House Bill 3215. So many of you here might be here because some of your colleagues attended some of those sessions and said you guys should join us here, and so we're definitely glad to have you. So you can see there just a brief listing of some of the places we went. We pretty much went to all 26, 27 HBAs around the state, so we probably saw a few of you there. We were pleased to have an esteemed panel of HERS rating professionals join us in those events. Kathy Howard from Burge Consultants, she's sitting in the audience. Mark Curry from Top Build, also in the back there, joined us. We had Robert Briggs from US Ecologic, Travis Chris, also from Fox Energy Specialist. And again, we're pleased to have with us today James Rodriguez from Fox Energy Specialist and Julio Samos from ARCXIS to help to answer a lot of those technical questions and get down to the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the legislation and the HERS index. So again, thank you all for being here. I'm just going to start with a brief overview of RESNET and the HERS index and what we've been doing to date from a national level, and then I'm going to pass it off to them to get into the details of the legislation, HERS ratings, and that sort of thing. To give you some background, if you're not familiar, the Residential Energy Services Network, or RESNET, is a nonprofit membership corporation created to develop a market for home energy rating systems and energy-efficient mortgages. Today, we are the national standards-making body for building energy efficiency rating and certification systems throughout the U.S. We are most commonly known as developers of the Home Energy Rating System, or the HERS Index, the industry standard by which a home's energy efficiency is measured. It's also the nationally recognized system for inspecting and calculating a home's energy performance. Often compared to the MPG for the auto industry, the HERS Index is meant to be an easy-to-understand system to compare energy performances of homes. Think of it like a golf score. The lower the number, the better. The reference home to which your home is compared is the 2006 IECC code, which averages about a score of 100. And your goal as a builder or a contractor who works with a builder is to get that score as low as you possibly can, because each 1-point change in the HERS Index represents a 1% change in the energy usage in that home. From a national perspective, last year, the average HERS score for the homes built was a 58, meaning those homes were 42% more energy efficient than a home built in the mid-2000s. There were over 337,000 homes with a HERS rating last year, and to date, we've had over 3.6 million homes rated across the country. We expect to hit the 4 million mark probably early next year, later this year. Some of the activity that's been driving those numbers are the large production builders. They are increasingly using the HERS Index score as part of their environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, reporting. There's a group called the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and they have developed corporate reporting standards for the building industry, and they recommend to builders that they use the number of homes that they've built that have a HERS score, the average of those scores, and how many of those scores went on for Energy Star certification as part of their ESG reporting to their stockholders. Another activity that we think is going to be driving more numbers for HERS ratings are the mortgage-backed securities green bond markets from Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. Both of those agencies have programs that do require the home be HERS rated and listed in the RESNET National Registry for them to underwrite some of those mortgages. And then lastly, the Inflation and Reduction Act, including the 45L tax credit, we also think is going to be a big driver of activity going forward. Now, we're especially proud of this because RESNET has worked for many years with the various Senate and House tax committees to try to work on a reform and extension of the 45L tax credit. So we're pleased to say that via the Inflation Reduction Act signed last year, there's now a 10-year extension on the 45L tax credit. And what that means for builders is potentially $2,500 per Energy Star certified home that you build, $5,000 per homes labeled as DOE Net Zero Ready, and then up to $2,000 per unit in multifamily residential buildings of 3 or fewer stories. So this is money available to you as tax credits as builders, and our HERS raters can help you file that paperwork to get those credits with the IRS. RESNET and our certified HERS raters are recognized by several programs for home certifications, federal tax credits, mortgage programs, and ESG reporting, as we're saying. Programs where we are recognized as the Home Certification Organization of Record include EPA Energy Star for new homes, EPA Energy Star for new homes in California, the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Program, the DOE Zero Energy Ready Program for California specifically, and the EPA for Water Sense labeled homes. We recently began the new Carbon Index, which is going to provide builders with a more accurate metric to measure the emissions that are calculated during a HERS rating. Also, since 2019, we have the HERS H2O standard. This is a whole house water efficiency rating. We developed it in partnership with the IECC and others. And it can be used to achieve the Water Sense label for homes. So if you are pursuing Water Sense for your homes, you will have to have a HERS H2O rating. To date, there have been nearly 2,300 homes that have received a HERS H2O rating. As you can imagine, a lot of them are in the western part of the country, Arizona, California, etc. KB Home is the first national production builder that is committed to having all its homes built in those western states receive a HERS H2O and Water Sense label. So of those 2,300 homes that have been HERS H2O rated so far, the average score is a 61, meaning that those homes, again, are about 39% more efficient in its water usage than those built in the mid-2000s. And just those 2,300 homes are estimated to save 129 million gallons of water annually. So we're very excited about that, and we want to see that program continue in places like Texas where it's also needed. So bringing it back to Texas, as I mentioned, over 337,000 homes were rated across the country last year. Over 81,000 of those were here in Texas. And so those homes that were rated also as part of Energy Star, NGBS, Greenbelt Texas, et cetera, means that about 1 in every 2 homes built here in Texas last year did receive a HERS energy rating. The average HERS score for the homes built in Texas last year was a 59, and that's going to be important as James and Julio talk about the thresholds per the new legislation. There are nearly 500,000 homes that have been rated here in Texas since we began the registry in around 2012, 2013. So again, you guys have been the top state for HERS ratings for homes pretty much since we started. And as you think about how to get started with this program, if you haven't already, know that there are nearly 700 certified RESNET HERS raters and rating field inspectors already certified and available to help you throughout the state. So now I'm going to pass it off to James Rodriguez to start some of the conversation about the energy codes, and he and Julio will get into more of the meat and potatoes of things for you.
Okay, can y'all hear me? Good morning. I can't think of a more exciting way to spend our Friday morning than talking about the wonderful world of energy codes with y'all.
Absolutely.
Living the dream here.
That's
all right.
Nowhere else I'd rather be.
So like Valerie said, I'm James Rodriguez, Fox Energy Specialist. I'll get into the nuts and bolts of this legislation and how it actually translates into practical terms and what it means out in the field for you builders in the room that are building homes and utilizing this pathway. Julio will chime in as needed as well. We'll keep these things pretty informal. If you have questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand. You're not going to throw me off the rhythm or anything like that. So just ask the questions as they come to mind, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. We have a ton of time here, but we'll kind of move quickly. For those of y'all that don't know what you're looking at right here with the Texas climate zones, Texas is split up into 3 climate zones. Most of it's climate zone 2. North Texas, where we're at right now in the Metroplex, is climate zone 3. And then up in the Panhandle and Amarillo area, you got climate zone 4. So That's just a good side note to have because that is going to be continuously referenced in both your energy code metrics as well as this new House Bill 3215 as it relates to the HERS index scores. This slide right here is it's a flow chart of how the state of Texas has organized energy code compliance across the entire state. So get your cameras out, take a photo of that slide. You can now take a nap or go back and get some food.
No.
This is by far the most important slide of the presentation. And what it is, it's just demonstrating all of the pathways in the state of Texas that you can comply with the energy code. There's no one set pathway. The one that everybody is most probably familiar with is the traditional ICC pathway. That's what you see up top. And within that ICC pathway, you have subset groups of compliance. We're all pretty used to that, but what most builders and trade partners don't realize is that there are now two universal pathways in the state of Texas. One has been on the books since 2001, that is Energy Star certification. So if you build a home anywhere in the state of Texas that is Energy Star certified, by law, by state law, that is deemed energy code compliant at the local level as well. And then now with the new House Bill 3215, we now have a second universal pathway, kind of a hybrid approach between what we're going to talk about with the HERS index and a 2018 IECC mandatory backstop and building envelope compliance. Yes, sir.
If our town has adopted the IECC 21, code 21, then they have to, if you do Energy Star or HERS, the 3215, they have to accept that as met code.
Yep. That's absolutely correct. Did everybody hear that question? So at the local level, if they adopt the latest and greatest 2021 IECC, but you're a builder and you build an Energy Star compliant home or this new HERS index pathway, that has to be accepted at the local level. To my knowledge, there's only one municipality fighting that. I'll give you a hint, it's the San Francisco of Texas. So, take that for what it's worth. But everywhere else, we've run into this issue time and time again, and it has not been a hurdle at the local level.
James?
Is that true for you, your experience as well, Julio?
Yeah, that's correct, James.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was going to say, let's hold the questions to the end, because then we can use the mic to go around and make sure we hear all the questions.
Okay. Well, all right.
Save your questions.
I won't be Phil Donahue and be combing the aisles with the mic then. All right. This graphic here explains kind of the meat and potatoes of House Bill 3215. So, and a lot of this we've already covered. It is on a 10-year runway here. With those HERS index scores being sorted out by climate zone. Right now, we're living in the second phase of it, where a lot of Texas is going to have to reach a HERS index target of a 59. You guys in the Panhandle, y'all have the luxury of being a 63, and so that's going to be in effect until the end of 2025, and then after that, it'll ratchet down to a 57 and a 55 respectively, and that's your HERS index score targets. This is just a little snippet about the actual ANSI standard. That is the mechanism that gives you a HERS rating. It's the ANSI 301 standard. That is referenced in the new state law as well. And in addition to that, there are the two other 2018 ICC requirements, meaning that it has to meet the 2018 ICC mandatory requirements as referenced in section R406.2, which we'll get in those details a little bit later. Also, the home has to be in compliance with the building thermal envelope provisions of those two tables referenced right there. And that's a key factor because it is a prescriptive building envelope, which for you climate zone 2 guys, it's probably not that big of a deal. But in North Texas, you're going to have to really get your calculations done with your HERS raters to come up with the best formula for you, because you are going to be benchmarked against those prescriptive values there.
Hello, guys. How are y'all? If James did present in the last slide the HERS index, right? There's numbers there, as you noticed, that the numbers are going down, and you saw Valerie pointed out the HERS index and how it works, right? And I always tell this joke, and I told Valerie I'm going to tell it again, that if the HERS index existed in my high school days, I wouldn't be here today, right? The lower the score, the better it was, right? But that's the way the HERS index works, right? The lower the score, the more energy efficient your home is. Now keep in mind that as the years go along, the lower the score, as the numbers start getting lower, we're getting there. This is why we're here today, and this is why it's so important that you connect with a rater to help you understand this, that if you don't already have a rater in your building or what have you, it's important that you connect with somebody when it comes to this, because it's only going to get more and more efficient. And that is what we're here to do, is to help you get there.
Yeah, it's a good point Julio made there. And then also the beauty about why we wanted to have the HERS index being introduced with this state law was that it does provide more flexibility in product selection. It's more of a, we don't care how you get to that score, just get there. It doesn't have a whole lot of do this if that, or do this with a certain product. So it's very product unbiased. But yeah, over time it does ratchet down a little bit. And when it gets down to 55 a few years from now, you're pretty much knocking on Zero Energy's doorstep at the HERS index of 55 in the low 50s. So that was also taken into consideration when we were negotiating this new law, that we wanted to have something that had a long shelf life to it, while at the same time try to achieve the state's energy efficiency goals of getting to as close to zero energy ready as possible. This is the table that is first referenced in the statute, referencing the mandatory requirements of the 2018 IECC. So I won't go into great details in all of these, and you guys that want electronic copies of these, I'm sure you can give us your business card and we'll provide you electronic copies of these as a future reference. But you can see that it just hits the high points of the basic things that you do with the normal code-built home. You got to post a certificate on the electrical service panel demonstrating that it's in compliance with the code pathway of choice. You have to do air leakage testing, which is done through a blow-door test. You have to test your ducts. You have to seal your ducts to meet those air leakage requirements on your duct leakage. You can't use building cavities as a duct supply or return duct plenum. That's been long established in previous editions of the code as well. And then your standard things like mechanical piping installation, the R3 sleeves around your mechanical piping on refrigerant lines and hot water lines as well. So all this stuff is pretty standard. Where it starts getting a little bit more of where you need to consult with your local third-party rater is mechanical ventilation requirements. You are going to have to kind of beef that up a little bit if you're used to the traditional air cycler with the motorized damper. So and it really does depend on the type of house you're building. Some builders may still be able to get away with that, but others may have to beef up their mechanical ventilation a little bit. Equipment sizing and efficiency ratings, that's nothing new. That's been long established in the code. And so you got to have the manual J's, load calculations done on your HVAC systems, and they have to be sized in accordance with manual S, ACCA manual S. That's long been established. Your HVAC contractors do that at permit phase, or at least they should be anyway. But it's just reinforcing it as part of this pathway. Other things in here, if it applies, with pools and spas or portable spas, then it has to meet the APSP requirements. But that's only if it's applicable. A lot of that may not be applicable to your specific projects. Lighting equipment, you have to have 90% high efficiency fixtures. High efficiency fixtures mean LED, pin-based fluorescent, or even CFL if you can still find CFL bulbs out there. But there's a 90% threshold on that as a bare minimum. And if you are using lighting equipment that use fuel gas, they can't have continuously burning pilot lights. We see that sometimes with front porches in higher end neighborhoods. So you have to be kind of on the lookout for that. Any questions regarding the mandatories? I know I went through that very quickly. But like I said, we can offer this material, if you give us your business card and ask for it electronically. This slide right here gets into the building envelope. And like I mentioned before, This is the prescriptive tables of the 2018 IECC. Probably not a huge deal for you Climate Zone 2 guys, but for Climate Zone 3 guys, this is what you're gonna have to contend with right here, is your wood frame wall assemblies. So you're gonna either have to do a 2x6 assembly, or if you continue to do a 2x4 assembly, you're most likely going to have a insulated sheeting panel to accompany that 2x4 wall assembly right there. That's North Texas, that's Climate Zone 3. Yes, that's what the 5 CI is. So when you see this in the code book, the R13 is the cavity fill, the plus 5 CI is continuous insulation. That means your exterior sheathing. R20 basically forces you into a 2x6 wall. Everything else we see in the marketplace for these prescriptive values is fairly common. In Climate Zone 3, with a 0.32 UFactor window, that means argon gas-filled windows, most likely, on your standard single hung window assemblies. But Climate Zone 2, you have a lot of flexibility there. So everywhere, Hill County and south in Texas, so basically your Hillsborough, Waco areas and south is going to be Climate Zone 2, and you're only going to be held to these benchmarks right here. Climate Zone 3, that's the 800-pound gorilla you got to overcome right there, is your wood frame wall assemblies. Any questions on that? Exciting stuff, I know.
Are these mandatory? My question, are these mandatory for the envelope?
No, thank you.
Or can you get to the 59 HERS rating without doing some of these,
So you have
floor insulation?
Yeah, you got to get to the 59 HERS rating, as well as demonstrate your building envelope is built to these standards here. So there is kind of a subset performance mechanism within the prescriptive chapter of the code. It's called the prescriptive UA. And so that gives you a little bit of wiggle room on some of these categories, but you have to do this in addition to getting that 59. So, and a lot of times by doing this, you're going to get pretty darn close to that 59 in Climate Zone 3 anyway. Actually, if you're going to do continuous sheathing in Climate Zone 3, there's a really good chance you're going to be really darn close to that 59 already because of making that selection.
So can you reach 59 or greater without doing the floor insulation?
Yes. So actually, that's a good point. The question was, can you get to the 59 without the floor insulation being R19 or the slab insulation being achieved? So slab insulation for Climate Zones 2 and 3, we don't have to worry about that. We're in heavy termite areas, so we're exempt from that. Climate Zone 4, you could probably get away with a lower slab edge insulation R value if you offset it somewhere else in your building envelope. But it has to be offset inside the building envelope. You can't pull that credit from elsewhere in the house. Yes.
So doing foam insulation, spray foam, in the attics, you're not doing your ceilings with R38, but you're doing your roof deck, so that still achieves that value they're asking for there.
What we're finding is that foam encapsulation can still pass these benchmarks in Climate Zone 2. But if you're doing that in Climate Zone 3, you're going to have a tough time, and you're going to have to contend with that wall assembly to offset the foam and cap. So that's kind of a downside to this pathway. Is it did kind of leave the foam and cap guys behind a little bit in North Texas at least. Climate Zone 3, I don't see it being a big deal, or Climate Zone 2 rather. It's really not that big of a deal. But Climate Zone 3, there is going to have to be some different levers that your rater is going to have to pull for you in order to maintain your foam and cap strategy. Could do it that way. The question was, can you do a roof line assembly of your foam and cap and then a blanket on the ceiling of the attic floor? I wouldn't recommend that myself. I would recommend more under the rafters if it was my builder that I was consulting, because you're going to see a lot more performance difference in performance with that strategy rather than breaking up the assembly lines with that. But on the bright side, with foam and cap strategies, you're not going to have any problem hitting those HERS scores. because you're putting all of your mechanical equipment and your ducts inside of the thermal boundary, you get a huge amount of credit on the HERS side. Your only battle is contending with truing up on the building envelope, specifically the wall assembly and the attic assembly values there.
Sure.
So, good
Julio,
question.
did you want to add anything?
Uh-oh, we got a
You
ring with a
need,
question.
you need to look at the bottom table, not the top table if you're a builder. You need to start following the performance path rather than prescriptive path. The UFactor table gives you dozens of ways to meet those
Yes.
requirements.
Yes, and so this UFactor table down here basically gives you kind of the max allowance of the entire assembly. So if you employ strategies like more advanced framing techniques, and you put a higher density bad insulation in the wall, then this is where we can come up with that subset prescriptive UA calculation that is more of kind of a performance alternative within this building envelope category to gain ground on these hurdles that are up here with the wall assemblies and the ceiling assemblies. So, good point, Bob. Thank you for clarifying that. For those of y'all who don't know Bob Ross, he's from the Central Texas areas. He's more of an energy guru than we are up here. He knows his stuff really well. So appreciate his input. Any more other questions about the building envelope provisions here? Because this is a biggie. This is a big one. Okay. I think this is where we turn it back to you, right, Val?
Yeah, I was wondering if you want to go back to 2 more slides on the other provisions and see if there were any questions about that.
Any other questions about this mandatory chart here?
We have a little extra time, so we got time for plenty of questions if you have any. Now's the time.
And I failed to make this crystal clear at the beginning of my part of this presentation, but this is an additional pathway, everybody. So if you are building out in the county where it still defaults to the 2015 energy code, that is still the state overlay energy code is 2015. So if you're out in the county where there's very little enforcement and you default to the 2015, you can still utilize that pathway. You don't have to go down this road. This is a pathway that is widely accepted for those builders that build in 2015 jurisdictions, build in 2018 jurisdictions, and now build in 2021 jurisdictions. So they can rely on one spec package, one strategy for 100% of their homes in the region and not have to have different packages to choose from. So I wanted to clarify that, and I apologize for not doing that sooner.
Julio?
Yep, Matt.
Pat, there you go.
It's my understanding that there's a policy that states that we can only go back so many code cycles. So when you get into the county in those areas, as we adopt 21, is 15 going to be even available, or is it going to fall off?
In the county where the county seat has adopted the 21, is that what you're referencing, Matt?
Well, let's just say that the state adopts 21, because right now we're in 18. So,
Yeah.
I
Well,
can
right now
remember-
we're technically in 15. This pathway, this additional pathway, references the 18 to make it a universal pathway. The state of Texas overlay energy code,
is 15?
it's still 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And that was on the table this legislative session where there was some bills on the floor that wanted to push the entire state, the entire suite of IRC codes to 2021. It didn't make it through committee, so they got to punt till next legislative session. So it's not going to be reintroduced most likely until 2 years from now.
It's still two code cycles, right?
Yeah, what you're referring to with the two code cycle rule is the product mandate bill that is still in effect, and it prohibits the code from restricting specific products that are accepted in 2 previous code cycles, and so that's still in effect. That's a big reason why the state overlay energy code is still holding the line at 2015, because they have to repeal that product mandate provision in order to advance their energy code statewide. Did I get that right, Sam? We were in codes and standards the other day. Oh, is it 3 code cycles? Okay, it's 3 code cycles for a product mandate.
Hey, Josh, thank you for what you're doing here. Kurt Dubose with Pentavia Custom Homes. For those of us that are crazy enough to build in Plano and Frisco and some of those municipalities.
Move out.
Yeah, Westlake, Southlake, yeah. So at the end of the day, though, we are having to dive into areas from an engineering perspective that is getting pretty detailed and in depth, right? Our mechanical systems and the manuals that they've been producing based off of these wall assemblies and how tight we're getting these homes consistently are having to be looked at because they're mismatched. What they're really concerned about from the mechanical side is they just want the family to be comfortable, right? So suddenly we find these units are oversized, and then they're trying to make sure they correct it because they got some kind of dehumidification system that's inside there, and blah, 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 blah. And now we're walking into fresh air systems. We don't want to lock our family up in a dungeon of,
stale air,
yeah. And allergens and pollutants and pollens and VOCs. I mean, the world's coming apart. With all that being said, you guys, from this perspective, have to be seeing assemblies, typical wall details that are being placed on these homes that you know where the rating is going to go once you start to see that design. And you probably see enough details of these assemblies coming through that you kind of know what assemblies need to happen per municipality. Correct?
Yeah, we've run enough models and done enough inspections to know what the practical trends are and know what works and what doesn't work. That's why if you're building a house in a more advanced code jurisdiction, the days of you using an old air cycle or mechanical ventilation setup, you're on borrowed time. Yeah. There's more advanced equipment out there. In fact, the code kind of drives it. There's more advanced mechanical fresh air equipment out there that has lockout controls that if it's too hot or humid outside, it locks out, doesn't introduce that stuff into the living space, and then when it has more favorable conditions outside, it makes up for lost time. And so we're already seeing that kind of stuff be market proven, those types of products they're becoming more and more market proven, especially on the warranty side as well. And right. I have one in my own personal home, one of the, like a more advanced mechanical ventilation system, because my house is airtight. It's at 3 air changes per hour because it's in North Texas and all that jazz. And so I can count on one hand how many times my relative humidity has crept up above 55%. Right. And so the new advances of mechanical ventilation technology are a big part of that. And equipment sizing and variable speed equipment is also a big part of that. So I would say if you're building in a more advanced jurisdiction and your HVAC vendor is speccing out air cycle mechanical ventilation with single stage equipment, but you're building a foam encapsulated house that's airtight, well, be prepared for some warranty callbacks.
Yeah.
So you need to have that discussion with your HVAC vendors to get your equipment right sized and make sure that your ventilation is up to snuff.
So where I was driving with that is that you have seen this enough. Are you guys producing wall assembly reports of suggestions that you could give to the builders and the architects when the plans come in, just to help kind of guide the conversation of saying, yeah, hey, these assemblies right here, this mixed set of product is what really you need to go for? Yeah,
what you're referring to is what we call scenario modeling for our clients, and Julio's outfit does that as well. We survey our clients. We take like their top 5 or top 10 most popular plans. We run them through standard specifications. Then we kind of plug and play on what wall assembly selections and what attic assembly selections and other strategies they want to employ to kind of pick and choose what's the best overall cost-effective measure for them to do to achieve that pathway. Or maybe they're wanting to achieve Energy Star, or maybe they're wanting to achieve 2021 Energy Code. Any one of those scenarios, your local rater should have the ability to run those scenario models for you to give you at least a menu of items that will give you green lights across the board. Okay. Any other questions? Did I get that right, Julio? You can be my fact checker. Okay. All right.
Yeah, add something.
You know, I've been married 23 years. Surprisingly. And I learned something about 6 minutes into my marriage in 1999 that I cannot read my wife's mind. I just can't. And I realized that very quickly. Something that I think is, we're learning a lot, right, is I've learned to partner with her. There are things that she's good at, and there's things that I'm good at. and some of the things that she's good at, I'm no good at, and some of the things that I'm good at, she's not good at. So if anything, I would just, recommend again and suggest and strongly suggest, a lot of this stuff can get complicated. And that is why we're here. It is to partner with you, the builder, and to help you understand, again, comparative analysis, what James was talking about, that kind of stuff. It takes a little while. We got people that nerd out with this stuff. And that's what we're here for. Yeah. and let us help you. And that is what we're here for, to be a partner with you to help you get through this.
We'll go ahead and wrap up, and then we'll still have more time for questions. Also, please have Scott scan your badge so we can email you all this materials. Our booth is actually right behind us here. We are the Education Center sponsor, so we have that prime position right there. So if you have questions you think of later or whatnot, come back to our booth. Scott and others will be there. They can answer those questions for you. We want to be available to you throughout this process to help you in any way we can. So just to wrap up, part of the great knowledge here that we have with James and Julio is in part because they are also proficient in building science and energy efficiency, but also in code and code compliance. Back in a few years ago, I think 2019 or so, we partnered with the IECC to create a new certification for our HERS raters to demonstrate their knowledge of code. It's called the IECC HERS Compliance Specialist. And basically, our certified resident HERS raters, like James and Julio here, also our rating field inspectors, again, we say we have nearly 700 of those folks throughout the state, they can take and pass the same residential energy inspectors and plan examiner exam that the code officials take. And once they do that, they are given this designation of the IECC HERS Compliance Specialist. So again, you have sort of a twofer, the best of both worlds. You have someone with that building science knowledge, with that energy efficiency knowledge, but also with the code compliance knowledge, so they can help you, I like to say, from cradle to grave, basically, from the beginning of your project to the end, and help you turn in the paperwork you need for code compliance. So they really are, meant to be kind of a one-stop shop. And I love Julio's marriage analogy. Yes, we want to be your partners in helping you build the best homes possible and getting the benefits of those, such as the tax credits. We're going to be, speaking of code officials, we're going to be at the BOAT conference next month. I don't know how many of you guys go to that. That's the Building Officials Association of Texas. Because again, our goal is to try to inform all parts of the value chain of building a home about the HERS Index, about this legislation, and what it means for them. So if any of you happen to attend those conferences, we'll be there next month as well. We'll have a session similar to this. So we certainly invite you to join. And in part, before we close and have more questions, we want to thank TAB and the Texas HBAs around the state. I've been traveling back and forth here to Texas since mid-February, coming to the local HBAs, doing lunch and learns, having James and Julio and others with me to discuss this legislation and the HERS Index. And I just have to tell you how gracious and just wonderful everyone has been. The food's been great. Everyone's been very nice. And so I just want to thank TAB for that opportunity to have a chance to come out and meet with you all. And again, if you like what you hear today, Scott will scan your badge. You can, we'll send that information. You can share it with your colleagues who maybe weren't able to join us today. And then sort of the next steps and questions, again, we'll go back to that. But again, should you have questions afterwards, come by our booth. If the show's over and you still have questions, email us at info@resnet.us. I answer that info box. And if I don't know the answer, I'll certainly pass it off to folks like James and Julio who do. We have a dedicated page to this initiative because it's so, so vast, if you will, around the state, and it has been proved to be very successful so far even. So if you go to our website, resnet.us/builders/HB3215. It's our dedicated landing page to this Texas initiative. And I got to tell you, other states are looking at this and contacting us and having questions about how this got done and how it can maybe be done in their state as well. So you guys truly are the leaders in that regard. And you can search for HERS rating providers and companies like Julio's and James's via our directories online as well. So now we can go back to some more questions in the audience, if anyone has any. That means you guys did an excellent job. You want to close with anything?
Thank y'all for coming, everybody. Appreciate it.